Balochistan, heard of it? Well, don't be hard on yourself, you know, but look, it's Islamic, it's occupied, it's persecuted, just one of many Islamic areas, actually, occupied by other Muslims. Who do we get on to talk about it? Who do you think? Tarek Fatah. People shouldn't be too critical if they haven't heard of Balochistan, but tell us a bit about its history and geography.
Well, it's very distinct from the rest of India. It goes back a few thousand years, and since the 15th century, it's been a state on its own. And in the mid-18th century, the British, through their wars with the expanding Russians, had an agreement where they took control of the state of Kalat, as it was known, and right up to the time when the British left. Like Burma, Balochistan was on the west side, and it had separate agreements, but instead of allowing it to be an independent country, for 9 months Pakistan recognized it, and in 1948 it invaded. It put a gun to the head of the ruler and made him sign an accession agreement. And since that time, the last 60 years, there have been 4 uprisings by ill-equipped young people. This time, most of the men involved are middle-class professionals, Western educated, and this time they're asking for independence. And part of Balochistan is occupied by Iran. Right. And things over there are so bad that the Baloch of Iran take refuge in Pakistan. Then there's a segment that's inside Afghanistan, and that's the only part where the Balochi language is recognized and they have some sort of autonomy. It's a terrible situation. Thousands have died, and the Pakistan military basically kidnaps these young men, kill them, or throw them off helicopters. And the bodies are found days later, and on their bodies are carved out symbols of written with the knife of Pakistan, Zindabad, which means long live Pakistan. It's a brutal occupation that has escaped attention because most of the Baloch are fairly, you know, not very sophisticated in propaganda. The Kurds, on the other hand, which is equivalent to the Baloch, have been closer in the West's mind. But right now there are 3 or 4 members of the U.S. Congress who have tabled a resolution in the U.S. House of Representatives asking for the right of self-determination of the Baloch people.
It's always amazed me that we discuss Palestine a great deal of the time, and you know we should never forget this, but the Islamic world, the hypocrisy, and you know this far better than I do, the occupation, Kurdistan, was it 4 different Islamic powers?
4, Syria, Iraq, Turkey, and Iran.
Right. Balochistan was spoken about, the Turks in Cyprus, Armenia.
Morocco has been occupying Western Sahara now since 1974. In fact, the longest wall of separation is in the desert. There are millions of refugees, the Saharan people represented by the Polisario Front, who have no hope because Morocco rules it with a, you know, with a very racist view. Sudan has been occupying Darfur now since the 1800s. Indonesia occupies West Papua now since the 1940s. Completely different people.
We hear so little about this, and there often is a racist dynamic here, where it's Arab occupying black areas and so on. But when it does make the press, every now and again there'll be some sort of long article about it, then it's forgotten again. The numbers are far greater than the numbers of people in Palestine.
I think one of the reasons is that the Palestinian issue is legitimate in that they aspire to a homeland of their own, but because they are Arabs, the rest of the Muslim world, in its own way, subscribes to its second-class status. So even the Baloch people, who now are very upset that no Arab nation supports them, even Bangladesh, that was not supported by any Islamic country when Pakistanis were committing genocide, finds it okay to be second class. It's internalized racism, and it's creating havoc in the non-Arab world where, I mean, I'm Indian, but my name is of Arabic origin. It puts you in that class that an Arab should never have an Indian name, but an Indian Muslim should always have an Arabic name.
We're told by Islamic apologists that Islam is colorblind. There's no racism in the House of Islam.
Hardly any. I mean, look at Balochistan. It is Punjab army occupying a very distinct people with a distinct language, a 5,000-year history. Pakistan itself is a name that's only 60 years old. Balochistan, on the other hand, is a 500-year-old state recognized by Whitehall, has agreements with the Queen, and yet the Pakistanis are very racist in their view about the Baloch, partly because it has the subcontinent's only black African population. They are,
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, the port of Gwadar, which was the easternmost part of the Arab Empire, was where the Arab traders would bring their slaves and sell in India. So the population of southern Balochistan is people who are as black as the Congolese.
There's something else you just referred to there, slavery, because while slavery existed, of course, in white, ostensibly Christian empires, it was those same white Christian people who said, this is wrong, we must end it. Slavery exists in the Islamic world, throughout its history, and still does exist.
Oh, in 1951, I can get you a newspaper, a New York Times report from Yemen, where a slave woman would be sold for $50 if she was black, if she was brown, and $15 if she was black. This is after the Second World War. In Saudi Arabia, there were slaves, and you can see the soccer team. It's all black. And slavery has produced immense damage to the Muslim psyche. And in the 11th century, there was this called the Zanj revolt, which was an uprising by African Muslim slaves in the Abbasid in Iraq.
There's so much, you know, you mentioned the soccer team. If you look at the English or the French soccer team, probably 50% black.
Yes, but they're equal citizens.
Of course, and as much as possible, people have never denied and tried to deal with the shame of slavery. This doesn't happen. I know the Arab world fairly well. There's almost a denial there ever was slavery. Slavery was a white Christian enterprise. It had nothing to do with us.
This is why I am very cynical about the Arab Spring. As long as the Arab Spring doesn't recognize the crimes of slavery and the crimes of racism against black Muslims or dark-skinned Muslims like me, there will be no sense of democracy or liberty. As long as Balochistan and Kurdistan are occupied, or Sahara is occupied by Arabs or Persians or Pakistanis, there cannot be a sense of democracy. You're just missing the point. You can have the tyranny of the majority, which is horrifying because even the Nazis had that, but you cannot have democracy if you believe that I, as a racially superior person, can occupy someone that's racially inferior.
As always, I learned something, not everything, but something when you're here. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Good to be here.